Hey everyone, Shaun Stevenson here, author of the Throne series, and I just finished reading a book that it's been taking me a while to read. I finished reading The DORADO Adventure by Lloyd Alexander, book number 2 in the Vesper Holly series. Now, I recently read book number 1, The Illyrian Adventure. Now, I picked up one of these by chance at a used bookstore, and I was thinking, what is this Indiana Jones type series by Lloyd Alexander? Lloyd Alexander is the author of the Prydain Chronicles, a series that I love. That's a fantasy series, and this really is an adventure series. At first, when I read the first book, I was kind of hoping for that slight sprinkle of supernatural that is in most of the Indiana Jones kind of storylines. Because in Indiana Jones, you have things like the Ark of the Covenant, or the Holy Grail, or the Shannara Stones? It can't be Shannara, that is a series. But anyways, there are this like slight supernatural elements that are in Indiana Jones stories. And so I was really hoping that Vesper Holly, because it was marketed as kind of an Indiana Jones-esque series coming out in the 80s after the Indiana Jones movies had started to come out. So I thought, okay, maybe this is going to have that. These really don't have that element in them, but they are super fun adventure stories. So in book number 2, you have this main character, Vesper Holly, who is indiscriminately rich. She just has tons and tons and tons of money, and which works well for the storyline because it allows her to travel everywhere. You don't have to worry about the money part of it or financing or anything like that. So Vesper Holly, she travels everywhere around the world, and she has kind of a caretaker named Brinny, a professor, who became the caretaker after her parents passed away. So Brinny and his wife Mary live with Vesper Holly in their Philadelphia mansion that Vesper Holly lives in, and then Brinny and Vesper go on all these worldwide adventures. Well, in this book, Vesper Holly gets a telegram telling her that she needs to come immediately to the fictional country of El Dorado, somewhere in near Panama kind of area, somewhere in Central America. And so she has to go because she apparently owns land with a volcano on it, and there are some interesting things going on with this volcano that she needs to investigate. So her and Brinny head down to Central America, to this country of El Dorado, and they begin searching for this volcano, and lots of adventures ensue. Now, I will just tell you this. This book was a lot of fun. I definitely enjoyed it. Lots of adventure, near scrapes, all those kinds of things. However, I do think it kind of turned into a little bit of a runaround story where the characters at one point are kind of running around from thing to thing to thing to thing again and again and again. And I thought, okay, are we going to move past this? Like, what's the reasoning going on here? Maybe there's going to be some kind of big reveal about this. And then when there was a quote unquote reveal about it, I thought, no. You can't do that. That is such a cheap way out of a plot situation. Lloyd Alexander, I was a little surprised at him that he did this. He takes a really cheap way out of a plot situation that Vesper and Brinny find themselves in. And I just thought that doesn't make sense, because why would that happen that way? Because someone could just come in, do X, Y, and Z very simply. So it kind of was a little disappointing that way. I didn't love that aspect of it, but the adventure and exploration is a lot of fun. There's a whole sequence in this abandoned town in El Dorado that was so fun. I was thinking, I haven't really read a story like this where they're in a country like El Dorado in Central America where it's like this abandoned town that just nobody lives in like this. And I thought that was really, really fascinating. It was almost like taking the Western ghost town and applying that kind of idea to Central America. And I thought that was just a fascinating setting to put these characters in at this one point. You also have some interesting setups with people who live in El Dorado, people who are from that country. And I thought that there was some interesting things that Lloyd Alexander did with those characters, and definitely some interesting reversals. Things that you expect and you assume are not actually true, which is kind of a theme of this entire book. This book is all about assumptions, and the assumptions that we make when we meet a person initially, the assumptions we make when we look at a person, and I thought that that was a very well explored theme for this middle grade sort of YA adventure story. And that is where Lloyd Alexander does really well. He is always so good at themes and getting those across in different ways and helping the reader to really process something like that. And so in this book, you really do work through assumptions and you think about the assumptions you make. All the characters are making assumptions, and all of these assumptions, some of them are true and some of them are very false. And I thought that was a really interesting way to go about the story. Now, one interesting thing about this series is that it is told again from the point of view of Brynny, the old professor caretaker, who has traveled the world a lot, knows a lot of things, went with Vesper Holly's dad on a lot of adventures, and in that POV, it's just a little interesting. Like, I was used to it now after reading the first book, which is the same way. It's in first person point of view, and it's told from Brynny's perspective. So Vesper Holly, who the series is named after, is not exactly the main character of the series. Brynny is, which I do again find kind of baffling why that choice was made. I think if this book had been written nowadays, a publisher would have said, no, you got to make Vesper Holly is your lead. Brynny is the side character, who's a great character, should definitely be there, but he's the side character, she's the lead character. But that is not the choice that was made in this series. And I do find it a little baffling. Like, I can't quite wrap my head around why Lloyd Alexander did this. I feel like he had to have had some kind of a reason, but I still don't see it. However, it's still a lot of fun as a story, lots of adventure, some good close calls, all those sorts of things I thought were really well done. So at the end of the day, I would give the DORADO Adventure a solid 4 out of 5 stars. If you like these kind of adventure stories, you like Indiana Jones, you like any of those kinds of, globe-trotting adventure kind of books, this is a good one. Definitely check it out. I don't think you necessarily have to have read The Illyrian Adventure to read this one, book 2, but there are a couple of things I think that you would lose out on if you had not read The Illyrian Adventure first. So I definitely do recommend reading that one first and then this one, because like I said, there's a couple of things that you'll be like, wait, who is that and what is that about and why is that important, that are built on in the first book. But this is really a standalone adventure too, and I feel like Lloyd Alexander did enough explanation to help anyone understand what is happening when they come into the storyline. There are some references you'll miss and a couple characters you'll be like, wait, who is that? But overall, you would have a good time reading this one and jumping right on in. So definitely check this one out. If you're into adventure stories, this is a good one. So until next time, everybody, keep reading. Bye.